Notching is a technique that is an essential skill to modern flintknappers. While not every projectile point style needs notching, it's something that if you want to get known and get experience making a wide variety of styles as a flintknapper, it's a skill that you need to know. So, what is notching? Notching is creating these little indentations here, which are important to affix a tool to a haft, like this knife blade to a handle. So this video I'm going to be talking about punch notching with Antler tools, which is how I like to notch my points. So as you may guess, this is a video directed towards other flintknappers. However, I will try to explain some things so that if you are a flintknapper yourself, you can kind of get an idea of what's going on. Like I said, notching isn't essential to making every projectile point style. In fact, there's several different ways that a point can be affixed to a haft for a tool or weapon. The simplest of these styles is a lanceolate blade. So here there's the tip, and at the base it constricts, and there's a ground area where it would be attached to a haft. The advantage of this is that it doesn't require any special tools or techniques. However, with this style, it doesn't do much to protect any lashings that is necessary for the tool. And you're taking up a lot of length of the blade just for a hafting area. Another type of hafting style is a stem. So a stem is this constricted area on this point. So this can either be straight, constrict, or flare. And this protects the lashings for a tool more so than a lanceolate point style. But it still has them exposed, and it still takes up a fair amount of the blade. Now for notched points, you've got these notches here, and those help secure the blade to a haft. And they've got several advantages over stemmed and lanceolate points. Number one, they don't take up very much of the blade edge. You've only got this tiny little space here, and the base below it that aren't used for cutting. And in some cases for projectile points, this basal area is actually sharp and can be an effective edge as well. Notches also help the projectile point to be more securely hafted to a handle or a spear shaft, for instance. So instead of just being bound around the point in the haft, you can actually kind of bind down onto the haft using the notches to kind of pull it down. Now notches can come in from several different directions. They can be coming in from the corners, they can come in from the sides, or from the base. And there's a large variety of different notching styles. There are two general categories of techniques used for notching. The first is pressure flaking, which uses a pressure flaking tool to release flakes for the notches, which is a kind of technique that most flintknappers, I would say, use. The second is indirect percussion, in which a tool is set on the edge and then struck with another tool. There are different advantages and disadvantages to these two techniques. Pressure flaking can give a lot more precision and control, and can be used to create some very delicate, thin notches. However, with indirect percussion, using a punch notch, you can get much deeper notches on a thick biface, and you can get through much tougher rock than you could with pressure flaking. However, in most cases your notches aren't going to be as narrow or as delicate as with pressure flaking. I prefer punch notching because of the extra power it gives, and when using Antler tools it's much easier to accomplish in my opinion, especially if you're making deep notches. So this is my punch notching tool. This is from a main beam of a white-tailed deer antler. It is kind of a screwdriver shape with rounded off corners and an edge on the working surface. So the actual working part of the tool is part of the hard outside edge of the antler, as opposed to the inner, softer, spongy part. And since this is kind of off-center on this tool, it allows me to resharpen it while keeping the working part on the hard outside edge. So let's go outside and I'll walk you through notching a point with my punch notching technique. So I use a few different tools when notching. First, obviously, is my punch notching tool. Second is my Antler billet that I use to strike with. And you can use a billet that isn't so flat. You can use a copper bopper. You can use a large piece of wood as a mallet to strike the punch notch. And third, a Antler pressure flaker. This is also a notching tool. This is useful for starting the notch and also cleaning up the notch as you go along. So I've got a little preform here. We're going to start the notching with the pressure flaking tool. It's helpful to have the pressure flaker start the notch because the punch notch might grab the edge too much and rip off more than what we want, little up and down of where I intend the notch to be. So, pressure flaking tool. Alright, to begin the notch, I'm going to scrunch it a little bit. This removes some of the sharp edge, and what the scrunching is basically I'm just rubbing the notching tool in it to remove a few very small flakes, make the edge a bit stronger. So I'm going to set my tool on the edge of where I intend to remove my flake. I'm going to put the tool just about where that corner is, just a little inside. And strike. There. It's one flake down. And I'm using the tool to pressure flake little tiny pressure flakes. That way I'm keeping the notch wider than my tool. As the tool's edges catch the sides of the notch, it'll bind up and remove one of these corners. So I want to keep my tool away from the corners of the point. Alright, working my other notch a little bit. I like to alternate between the notches. That way if one notch stops shorter than I intended it, I'm not going to be way ahead with the other notch. Or if I have one notch that's really deep and I haven't started the other one, if that second notch doesn't end up as being as deep, that way I don't have a asymmetrical point. So I can kind of keep the notches symmetrical by alternating as I go along. Now you want to keep the point while you're punch notching on the part of your leg towards the knee, where it's more firm. If it's back here where it's soft, it'll sink in and that can cause some problems with the flakes to remove cleanly, or it might cause the flake to remove some of the corners. So keep it up here where it's firm. Again, trying to keep the notch wider than my tool. Notice I take a lot of time just setting that tool where I want it on the edge. Now that's something you kind of develop a feel for, but notching is something you want to take nice and slow. That way you get good notches. If you try to rush it, you're going to end up breaking the point or causing your notch to end sooner than you'd like. That flake was unsuccessful, so I don't want to do too much scrunching because this little edge in here is going to be kind of thick from that failed flake. Keep that wide. There we go. It's important to remember that you flip the point over every time we remove a flake on one side, unless that one flake is unsuccessful. If I were to just crush it a little bit, I may take another swing at the one face before flipping it over again. Now, this tool has a lot of power, so you don't really want to force the flakes too much. So if it doesn't take after one or two swings, just take a look at it, see what's going on. This flake, I think I'm going to remove with my pressure flaker. Now I can get a flake off the side I want. Also, one thing to keep in note is that if your base isn't perfectly symmetrical like this one, kind of shape it as you go. That way you can really tell if one notch is deeper than the other before you decide to stop notching. Now, why am I using this Antler pressure flaker in tandem with my punch notch? Sometimes things just get a little funky in there. You kind of need the precision of a pressure flaker to clean it up. But yeah, I think I'm good with these notches. Hopefully this gives you a good overview of the process that I use. But yeah, I'm gonna finish this point up off camera. I hope this helped you guys.